Ambassador Chen Wei stood at the entrance of the Galactic Council chambers. The building reached so high into the purple sky of Nexus Prime that its top disappeared into the clouds. Each crystal wall reflected light in ways that made her eyes hurt if she looked too long. 50 years ago, no human had ever seen anything like this. Now she was here to defend her entire species. "Ambassador, they're ready for you," her aide Marcus said quietly. The young man was trying to hide his nervousness, but Chen Wei could see his hands shaking slightly as he held the data pad. Chen Wei took a deep breath. "How many species are attending today?" 347, ma'am. The Corvins made sure everyone would be here. Of course they did. The Corvin Empire wanted to make a spectacle of putting humanity in its place. Chen Wei straightened her simple black suit. While other species wore elaborate robes or powered armor to these meetings, humans had learned that sometimes simple was better. It made them look less threatening, even if that wasn't always true. The doors opened with a sound like wind chimes. The council chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from hundreds of different worlds. Some delegates floated in water-filled tubes. Others sat in special atmosphere boxes that kept their home planet's air. The Corvin delegate stood in the center, his body crackling with energy. The Corvins didn't have solid bodies like humans. They were beings of pure energy wrapped in a shell that looked almost human, if you didn't notice the lightning dancing under their transparent skin. "The human delegation has arrived," announced the prime speaker. The Zalathi was ancient even by galactic standards. Her 6 arms moved independently as she controlled the floating screens around the chamber. "We may begin." Chen Wei walked to the designated platform for the accused. That's what humanity was today, the accused. Marcus and her 2 other aides followed, carrying boxes of data chips and evidence. They would need every bit of it. "Honored delegates," the Corvin representative began, his voice echoing like thunder. "We are here because humanity has shown once again that they cannot be trusted to follow galactic law." He waved his hand and images appeared in the air. These are the 3 worlds in the Corvin neutral zone where humans have illegally established colonies. The images showed dusty planets with small domed cities. Chen Wei recognized them immediately. Mining Colony 7, Agricultural Station Beta, and Research Outpost 12. 17,000 humans lived on those worlds. "These worlds are sacred to the Corvin Empire," the delegate continued. "They are the resting places of our ancestors from 10,000 years ago. By colonizing them, humanity has shown complete disrespect for our culture and our laws. They have violated 17 different treaties." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some delegates looked at Chen Wei with disappointment. Others seemed eager to see humanity punished. The Thromax delegate, a creature that looked like a giant mantis made of crystal, clicked its mandibles in what Chen Wei knew was satisfaction. They had never liked humans. The Corvin delegate raised his energy field, making himself glow brighter. "We demand immediate evacuation of all human colonies in the neutral zone. Furthermore, humanity must pay reparations equal to 30% of Earth's total economic output for the next 100 years. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even some of the Corvin's allies looked surprised. 30% would cripple Earth's economy. Millions would starve. "Does the human delegation wish to respond?" the Prime Speaker asked. Chen Wei stepped forward. "We do, honored Prime Speaker. But first I must ask the Corvin delegate a question." She looked directly at the energy being. "How many human relief ships have attempted to reach those colonies in the last month?" The Corvin delegate's energy flickered. "That is not relevant to—" 23, Chen Wei interrupted. 23 ships carrying medical supplies, food, and water. Ships marked with the universal symbol for humanitarian aid. "How many reached their destination?" Silence filled the chamber. "None," Chen Wei said. "Every single ship was destroyed." By Corvin warships, the chamber erupted in voices. Several delegates stood up in shock. The Prime Speaker had to pulse the lights 3 times to restore order. "You have no proof," the Corvin delegate said, but his glow had dimmed slightly. Chen Wei nodded to Marcus, who activated his data pad. Sensor logs appeared on the main screen. "These are the flight records from Mining Colony 7. They show Corvin battlecruisers destroying unarmed medical transports." She paused. "There's a plague affecting our colonies. The Andromedan plague. Without medicine, people are dying. Children are dying. The colonies are illegal," the Corvin delegate said. "Any ships entering the zone are protected under Galactic Medical Treaty 7, Chen Wei finished. Even in disputed territory, medical ships must be allowed to pass. You know this. She turned to address the full council. 17,000 humans are on those worlds. 4,000 are children under the age of 10. Without supplies, they will all be dead within 3 months. Then they should evacuate, said the Valerian delegate, a slug-like being whose translator made everything sound bored. With what ships? Chen Wei asked. The Corvins destroy anything that enters the zone. This is emotional manipulation, the Corvin delegate said. Humans always resort to talking about their offspring when they want sympathy. The law is clear. Those worlds are ours. Chen Wei pulled up new images. These are your sacred burial grounds. The pictures showed empty deserts, ancient ruins covered in sand. No sign of anything built in thousands of years. You haven't visited these worlds in 10 millennia. You didn't even notice humans were there until we filed mining claims for minerals you didn't know existed. More murmurs from the crowd. The Corvin delegate's energy field started sparking angrily. Furthermore, Chen Wei continued, I have here the original colonization permits, signed by the Galactic Council 40 years ago, designating these worlds as open for settlement by any species. The Corvins never filed an objection until 2 years ago, when we discovered trilithium deposits. Ancient burial grounds take precedence over mining rights, the Prime Speaker said, though she sounded less certain now. Do they? Chen Wei asked. Or is this about something else? She looked around the chamber. How many of you have noticed that every time humanity makes a discovery, develops a new technology or establishes a successful colony, suddenly there's a legal challenge? A territorial dispute? An ancient claim that no one mentioned before? The Corvin delegate stepped forward aggressively. You dare suggest? I suggest nothing, Chen Wei said calmly. I simply present facts. In 50 years of membership in this council, humanity has faced 237 legal challenges. The next closest species faced 12 in their first century. She turned back to the Prime Speaker. We request a full investigation into the destruction of medical ships and time to present our complete defense. Denied, the Corvin delegate said before the Prime Speaker could respond. This is a delaying tactic. The Council must vote now. The Prime Speaker's 6 arms waved in uncertainty. The Corvin delegate is within his rights to call for immediate judgment. She looked at Chen Wei with something that might have been sympathy. You have one more opportunity to present evidence before we vote. Chen Wei nodded slowly. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but Marcus was already pulling out the sealed box they had brought. Inside were discoveries from the contested worlds that would change everything. The question was whether the Council would listen, or if fear of the Corvins would win. She looked at the Corvin delegate, whose energy field was pulsing with confidence. He thought he had already won. He thought humanity would roll over like they had for 50 years, always trying to fit in, always trying to please everyone. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Humanity had been patient. They had been diplomatic. But when children were dying and their species was being systematically targeted, humans had a tendency to stop being nice. Very well, Chen Wei said. Let me show you what we really found on those worlds. Chen Wei opened the sealed box with steady hands. Inside were memory crystals that glowed with a soft blue light. The council chamber grew quiet as she picked up the first crystal and inserted it into the display system. 6 months ago, our mining teams on World 7 made a discovery, she began. Images appeared on the main screen showing a deep cavern. They weren't looking for anything unusual. Just trilithium. But 30 meters down they found this. The image changed to show walls covered in symbols that seemed to shift and move even in the still photograph. Several delegates leaned forward. The ancient Zelathi Prime Speaker's 6 arms stopped moving completely. We didn't recognize the language, Chen Wei continued. It's not in any galactic database. But we found something else. She switched to a video. It showed a human archaeologist touching one of the symbols. Suddenly, the entire wall lit up, projecting a star map into the air. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Even the Corvin delegate's energy field flickered with surprise. The ruins react only to human touch, Chen Wei said. We've tested it with 12 other species who volunteered nothing. But any human, even our children, can activate them. This proves nothing, the Corvin delegate said. But his voice had lost some of its thunder. Ancient ruins are found throughout the galaxy. True, Chen Wei agreed. But these ruins contained something else. Marcus, her aide, activated another display. This time it showed recordings from inside the ruins. Strange machines lined the walls, dormant for thousands of years but perfectly preserved. As the human exploration team moved through the chambers, lights began to activate, following them like faithful pets. The machines started working when we arrived, Chen Wei said. They began transmitting. Not to us, but outward, beyond our galaxy. The prime speaker finally spoke. Transmitting what? A warning, Chen Wei said. She played an audio file. It was a series of tones that made several delegates cover their audio receptors. The sound was wrong somehow, like nails on glass mixed with screaming wind. Our linguists worked for months to decode it, Chen Wei continued. It's a mathematical sequence that translates to a countdown that started the moment humans activated the ruins. She switched to the next crystal. This is from World 12, our agricultural colony. Similar ruins appeared, but these showed vast chambers filled with what looked like weapon systems. Same age, same reaction to humans, same countdown. And World Beta? The prime speaker asked, all 6 of her arms now gesturing with concern. The same, Chen Wei confirmed. But there we found this. She showed an image that made the entire council fall silent. It was a mural, carved into stone so hard that modern tools could barely scratch it. The mural showed ships covering entire star systems, consuming planets, leaving nothing but darkness behind. At the center of the mural were beings that looked like living shadows with too many teeth. The colonists named them the Devourers, Chen Wei said. And according to the countdown, they'll be here in 18 months. The council chamber erupted. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. Some called her a liar. Others demanded more proof. The Thromax delegate's crystalline body was vibrating so fast it created a high-pitched whine. Order, the prime speaker commanded, pulsing the lights until everyone settled. This is a serious claim, Ambassador Chen. You're suggesting an extragalactic threat? I'm not suggesting anything, Chen Wei replied. I'm telling you what we found. The ruins are defensive installations. They were built to detect and fight something, and they only respond to humans. The Corvin delegate moved forward, his energy field now blazing. This is clearly a deception. Humans are known for their creativity, their fiction, their lies. They fabricated this threat to avoid evacuation. Chen Wei turned to face him directly. Then explain this. She activated her final piece of evidence. It was a communication intercept, but not from the ruins. The Corvin delegate's own voice filled the chamber. The humans are advancing too quickly, the recorded voice said. Their adaptability is unprecedented. They form emotional bonds with other species, making allies everywhere they go. In another century, they'll be unstoppable. We must use the council to eliminate them now while they're still weak. Another Corvin voice responded. What about the neutral zone? We'll claim the worlds as sacred sites. The council always respects religious claims. Once we control their trilithium deposits, we can strangle their expansion economically. The recording ended. The chamber sat in stunned silence. The Corvin delegates' form began to pulse violently. Those communications are private. This is illegal surveillance. Actually, Chen Wei said calmly, under Treaty 9, any communications regarding potential threats to council members are public domain. You were discussing the elimination of a council species. That makes it our business. She turned to address the full council. For 50 years, humanity has tried to fit in. We've shared our medical knowledge freely. When the Beta Plague hit the Valerian colonies, human doctors died treating patients. When the Altarian system faced famine, human agricultural experts spent years teaching them our farming methods. We've asked for nothing in return. Several delegates nodded. The Altarian representative, a tall being covered in feathers that changed color with emotion, stood up. This is true. Humanity saved 12 million of my people. And when pirates attacked the Zenthran trade routes, Chen Wei continued,
human patrol ships defended them for free,
losing 3 vessels in the process. The small Zenthran delegate chittered in agreement, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. But every time we succeed, Chen Wei said, her voice growing stronger, every time we thrive, we face legal challenges. Territory disputes, trade restrictions. Why? Because some of you fear what we might become. The Corvins just said it openly, what others think privately. Lies. The Corvin delegate roared, his energy field expanding dangerously. Then let's talk about facts, Chen Wei said. She pulled up medical data on the screen. 4,000 human children are dying on those colonies. The Andromedan plague is spreading. Without medicine, they have perhaps weeks to live. The Corvins know this. They're counting on it. They want those colonies empty, and they don't care how it happens. Images appeared showing sick children in overcrowded medical facilities, parents holding babies who were too weak to cry, doctors working without proper equipment, trying to save lives with whatever they had. This is emotional manipulation, the Valerian delegate said, though his tone was less certain than before. No, Chen Wei said. This is reality. This is what's happening right now while we debate ancient claims and legal technicalities. She looked around the chamber. And while you let children die over mineral rights, something far worse is coming. She brought back the images of the ruins. These defenses were built by someone who knew the devourers were coming, someone who designed weapons that only humans can activate. Why, we don't know. Maybe it's our chaotic thought patterns. Maybe it's our emotional responses that most of you find so primitive. But the fact remains, we're the only ones who can operate these defenses. The Prime Speaker's arms waved in complex patterns as she processed the information. If this threat is real, why haven't our long-range sensors detected anything? Because they're not looking in the right place, Chen Wei said. The ruins point to coordinates outside our galaxy. We've aimed our best telescopes there. Do you want to see what we found? She didn't wait for an answer. The main screen shifted to show a section of space between galaxies. At first, it looked empty. Then Chen Wei enhanced the image. There were shadows moving against the cosmic background radiation, shapes that shouldn't exist, things that moved with purpose toward their galaxy. They're coming, Chen Wei said simply. In 18 months they'll be here. The only defenses that might stop them are on the worlds you want us to abandon. So you have a choice. Let us prepare, or face extinction, while arguing about who owns some empty rocks. The Corvan delegate's form was sparking violently now. Even if this is true, the ruins should be under Corvan control. We are the superior species. We've ruled stars for millennia. And yet the ruins don't respond to you, Chen Wei pointed out. They chose humans. Maybe because we're the only species here that consistently helps others without asking what's in it for us. Maybe because we're the only ones crazy enough to fight for people who hate us. She looked directly at the Prime Speaker. Humanity requests full access to all three worlds to activate and understand these defenses. We request immediate medical aid for our colonies, and we request the Council's support in preparing for what's coming. The chamber fell silent. Everyone waited for the Prime Speaker's response. The fate of humanity and possibly the entire galaxy hung in the balance. The Prime Speaker's 6 arms moved slowly through the air as she processed everything Chen Wei had presented. The ancient Zelathi had lived for 3,000 years and had seen empires rise and fall. But this was something new. The evidence is compelling, she finally said. However, the Corvan Empire has filed a formal complaint. We must follow procedure. The Corvan delegate's energy field pulsed with satisfaction. Yes, procedure. The law is clear. These worlds fall within the Corvan neutral zone. Any claims about ancient threats do not override existing treaties. Chen Wei watched as several delegates nodded in agreement. Even with everything she had shown them, they were more afraid of breaking protocol than facing extinction. This was the problem with the Galactic Council. They had become so comfortable, so set in their ways, that they couldn't recognize a real threat when it was shown to them. Ambassador Chen, the Prime Speaker continued, while your discovery is interesting, you have not provided sufficient evidence that this threat is immediate enough to override Corvan territorial claims. Marcus stepped forward and whispered urgently in Chen Wei's ear. She nodded and turned back to the council. Then let me provide more evidence, she said. She inserted a new data crystal into the system. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring station detected this. The screen showed a distant star system on the edge of the galaxy. As the council watched, one of the planets simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not exploded. It was there one moment and gone the next. The Kepler 442 system, Chen Wei said. Uninhabited, thankfully, but it had 3 planets yesterday. Now it has 2. The delegates began murmuring anxiously. The Thromax representative's crystalline body started vibrating again. Space anomalies happen, the Corvan delegate said, but his energy field was flickering uncertainly. Do they? Chen Wei asked. She showed another image. The Proxima 9 system 5 days ago. It had an asteroid belt. Now it doesn't. She switched to another image. The Beta Carney station, an automated mining facility. It sent its last transmission 6 days ago. When we sent a probe to investigate, we found nothing. Not wreckage, not debris, nothing. The Altarian delegate stood up, his feathers shifting to deep purple, a color Chen Wei knew meant fear. These locations, they form a line pointing directly toward the galactic core. Yes, Chen Wei confirmed. Whatever is causing these disappearances is moving in a straight path. At their current speed, they'll reach the first inhabited systems in 17 months and 3 weeks. 17 months, the Prime Speaker repeated. That matches your countdown. Chen Wei nodded. The ruins knew. Whoever built them could calculate exactly when the Devourers would return. Return? The Valerian delegate's translator made the word sound even more ominous. You're saying they've been here before? Look at the archaeological record, Chen Wei said. She pulled up data that every species learned in their basic education. 12,000 years ago, the Great Silence, hundreds of thriving civilizations simply stopped communicating. No one knows why. 10,000 years ago, the Corvan Empire suddenly abandoned dozens of colony worlds, including the 3 in the neutral zone. They never explained why. The Corvan delegate's form sparked angrily. Our ancestors had their reasons. 8,000 years ago, Chen Wei continued, ignoring him. The Zalathi lost contact with their outer colonies. They found them empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty cities. The Prime Speaker's arms stopped moving entirely. How do you know about that? It's not in any public record. Because the ruins told us, Chen Wei said simply. They contain historical records, records of every time the Devourers have come to our galaxy. They come, they feed, they leave, and every time the galaxy loses a little more. A few more species go extinct. A few more worlds become empty. She looked around the chamber at all the different species. They're farming us, coming back every few thousand years to harvest whatever has grown. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates were shouting that it was impossible. Others were demanding more proof. A few were already calling their homeworlds to report what they had learned. This is insanity, the Corvan delegate roared, his energy field expanding to fill half his platform. The humans are trying to frighten us into giving them what they want. Are we? Chen Wei asked. She turned to the Zenthran delegate. Your people have the best long-range sensors in the galaxy. Have you detected the anomalies I described? The small being chittered nervously, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. We have detected something. We thought our sensors were malfunctioning. And you? Chen Wei looked at the Altarian. Your people map stellar positions for navigation. Have you noticed stars disappearing? The feathered being's colors shifted through several shades before settling on a deep blue of truth-telling. 43 stars have vanished from our charts in the last month. We assumed it was a mapping error. Chen Wei turned back to the Prime Speaker. Every species here has seen the signs. You just didn't want to believe them. It's easier to fight over territory and trade routes than face the truth. Something is coming to eat our galaxy, and the only defenses we have are on 3 worlds the Corvans want to take from humanity. Even if this is true, the Prime Speaker said slowly, the law is the law. The Corvan Empire has prior claim. No, they don't, Chen Wei interrupted. She pulled out one final data crystal. This is from the ruins on World 7. It's a complete historical record of the neutral zone. Would you like to know who really owned those worlds? She didn't wait for permission. The screen filled with images of a species no one recognized. They were tall, thin beings with 6 arms, much like the Zalathi but different. Their cities were beautiful crystalline structures that seemed to sing in the recordings. The harmonics, Chen Wei said. They lived on those worlds 15,000 years ago. They built the first defensive installations. They fought the Devourers and lost. But before they died, they did something incredible. The image changed to show the harmonics working frantically in underground chambers. They were building the ruins, installing the strange machines, carving warnings into walls that would last forever. They built the defenses for the next species who could use them, Chen Wei said. They somehow knew that one day, a species would evolve that could activate their machines. They left instructions, weapons, and hope. She looked at the Corvin delegate. The Harmonics owned those worlds. Then they died. The Corvins found them empty 10,000 years ago and claimed them. Then you abandoned them when you realized something was wrong. You knew something had killed the Harmonics. You were afraid. The Corvin delegate's form was fluctuating wildly now. You cannot prove— I can, Chen Wei said. She displayed Corvin historical records, obtained through legal channels. Your own. Archives talk about the cursed worlds where the ancestors fled from, the hunger that comes from beyond. You abandoned those worlds because you were terrified. And now that humans aren't afraid, now that we're activating defenses you couldn't even touch, you want to take them back. She turned to address the full council. The Harmonics died to leave us these defenses. They work for humans, only humans, for reasons we don't understand. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's evolution. Maybe something about humanity was always meant for this moment. But the fact is, we're the only ones who can operate these weapons. Weapons? The Thromax delegate's translated voice was sharp with interest. You haven't shown us any weapons, Chen Wei smiled grimly, because I wanted to discuss this peacefully first. But if you need to see them— She activated her communicator. Captain Harrison, please demonstrate Installation 3. On the main screen, a view from a human ship appeared. It showed one of the contested worlds from orbit. As the council watched, a beam of light erupted from the planet's surface. It was impossibly bright, making the screen automatically dim to protect viewers' eyes. The beam reached into space and struck a dead asteroid the humans had moved into position for this demonstration. The asteroid didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist, converted entirely into energy that dissipated harmlessly into space. That's at 1% power, Chen Wei said quietly. We don't know what full power would do. We're afraid to test it. The chamber was completely silent. Even the Corvin delegate had stopped sparking. These weapons, the Prime Speaker finally said, they could destroy entire fleets. Or defend against things that eat planets, Chen Wei said. That's what they were built for. Not to conquer, but to protect. The Harmonics died to give the galaxy a chance. And they gave that chance to humanity. She looked around the chamber one more time. So yes, we could evacuate those worlds. We could let our children die to satisfy Corvin pride. We could follow your laws and procedures while the galaxy burns, or we could do what humans do best. We could stand up and fight for everyone, even those who hate us, because that's what the Harmonics believed someone would do. That's why they built these defenses. They had faith that someday a species would come along that was stupid enough, brave enough, or crazy enough to use them. The weight of her words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Everyone understood what she was saying. Humanity was offering to be the galaxy's shield, even after being treated as second-class citizens for 50 years. The vote count stood at 173 in favor of the Corvin claim. Chen Wei watched the numbers climb on the display. She needed 174 votes against to block the motion. But she could see the fear in the delegates' eyes. They were more afraid of the Corvin's immediate power than the distant threat of the Devourers. The Prime Speaker's 6 arms moved to record the final count. The vote stands at 212 in favor, 135 against. The motion passes. Humanity must evacuate the neutral zone within 1 solar rotation. Chen Wei felt Marcus tense beside her. Her other aides were whispering urgently, telling her to accept the decision to negotiate for more time. But Chen Wei remained perfectly still, her face calm. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but she had prepared for it. Ambassador Chen, the Prime Speaker said, not unkindly. The Council has spoken. Will humanity comply? Chen Wei stepped forward to the center of the chamber. Every eye sensor and optical organ turned to her. The Corvin delegate's energy field was pulsing with triumph. Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, Chen Wei began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. For 50 years, humanity has respected this institution. We've followed your laws, even when they were applied unfairly. We've contributed our knowledge, our resources, and our lives to help other species. We've been patient. We've been diplomatic. We've been everything you asked us to be. She paused, looking around the chamber. But you're asking us to let our children die. You're asking us to abandon the only defenses against annihilation. You're asking us to be complicit in our own extinction, and possibly yours. The Corvin delegate started to speak, but Chen Wei raised her hand. I'm not finished. Her voice had changed. It was harder now, like steel wrapped in silk. You want to know what makes humanity dangerous? It's not our weapons or our technology. It's not our adaptability or our rapid advancement. It's something much simpler. She looked directly at the Corvin delegate. We're the only species in this chamber that would die for strangers. We're the only ones who run toward danger when everyone else runs away. We're the only ones who see a threat to the galaxy and think, we have to stop this instead of this isn't our problem. She pulled out a small device from her pocket. Several security officers moved forward, but she held it up to show it was just a communicator. Before I came here today, I met with the Human Colonial Council, all 17,000 colonists on those 3 worlds. They knew this vote might go against us. They knew you might demand their evacuation. Do you want to know what they said? Without waiting for an answer, she activated the device. A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It was a young girl, maybe 8 years old, clearly sick with the Andromedan plague. Her face was pale and she was lying in a medical bed. My name is Sarah Chen, the girl said, her voice weak but clear. I'm 8 years old. I live on Mining Colony 7 with my parents. She coughed and someone off-screen gave her water. The council people want us to leave. But if we leave, the monsters will come and eat everyone. So we're not leaving. We're staying to fix the machines that will protect everyone. Even the mean aliens who don't like us. The hologram changed to show a middle-aged man in a mining uniform. John Martinez, Colony 7, I've got 2 kids here. They're both sick. But we're not evacuating. Someone has to activate those defenses. If it has to be us, then it has to be us. More colonists appeared. Teachers, doctors, miners, scientists, even children. All of them saying the same thing. They wouldn't abandon the defenses even if it meant their deaths. The last hologram was an elderly woman, the colonial governor of World 12. Governor Amanda Park here. We've taken a vote. All 17,000 colonists have decided. We're declaring independence from the Galactic Council's authority. We don't recognize your right to remove us from worlds where we're the only thing standing between the galaxy and extinction. The holograms faded. The chamber was silent. Chen Wei looked at the prime speaker. Humanity hereby formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will maintain and activate the defensive installations on all 3 worlds. We will prepare for the Devourer's arrival, and when they come, we will fight them. Not because the Council asked us to, not because we'll gain anything from it, but because it's the right thing to do. The Corvin delegate's energy field exploded outward. This is rebellion. This is an act of war against the Council's authority. Yes, Chen Wei said simply. It is. The single word hit the chamber like a physical blow. No species had ever defied the Council so directly. The consequences could be catastrophic. Economic sanctions, blockades, even military intervention. But here's the thing, Chen Wei continued. We've run the calculations. If the Council sends fleets to force our evacuation, you'll need at least 60% of your combined military forces to overcome the planetary defenses we've activated. That will take 3 months to coordinate, and another month to execute. By then, millions of our colonists will have died from the plague, but the defenses will be fully operational. She pulled up a tactical display. Meanwhile, your fleets will be concentrated in the neutral zone when the Devourers arrive from the opposite direction. They'll hit your undefended worlds first. By the time you realize what's happening and recall your fleets, half the galaxy will be gone. You're threatening us, the Valarian delegate said. No, Chen Wei replied. I'm doing math. You can fight us and probably win. But you'll lose everything to the Devourers. Or you can let us prepare the defenses and have a chance at survival. Those are your options. The prime speaker's arms were moving in agitation. Ambassador Chen, surely there's room for negotiation. The time for negotiation was before you voted to let our children die, Chen Wei said. Her voice was calm, but there was fire behind her eyes. Now we're done talking. We're done asking permission. We're done being your second-class citizens who you can sacrifice whenever it's convenient. She turned to address the smaller species, the ones who had been helped by humanity over the years. To our friends, our allies, those we've helped and those who've helped us, humanity's offer stands. Come to the neutral zone. We'll protect you. When the Devourers arrive, stand with us or stand behind us, but we'll shield you either way. The Altarian delegate stood up, his feathers shifting to gold. The Altarian Republic stands with humanity. The Zenthran delegate chittered and stood as well. The Zenthran Trading Alliance remembers who protected our ships. We stand with humanity. One by one, other species began standing. The Melody, saved from a plague 3 years ago. The Terrain, whose colony humanity had defended from pirates. The Yilin, who humanity had taught advanced agriculture. Within minutes, 37 species had stood up. The Corvin delegate's energy field was going wild. You fools! You're choosing extinction. The Council will crush this rebellion. With what? Chenwei asked. Look around. How many species just stood with humanity? How many more are considering it? Your council is fracturing because you've spent so long playing politics that you've forgotten what real leadership looks like. She looked at the Prime Speaker. Humanity didn't want this. We wanted to work within the system. But the system is broken. It values bureaucracy over lives, procedure over survival. So we're done with the system. The Prime Speaker seemed to age before their eyes. Ambassador Chen, you're fracturing 10,000 years of galactic unity. No, Chenwei said. The Devourers are coming to fracture it. We're trying to save what we can. The question is whether you'll help or hinder us. She turned to leave, then stopped. Oh, one more thing. Those medical supply ships you've been destroying, Corvin delegate. We've been recording everything. Every destroyed ship, every murdered crew member, every violation of galactic law. We're transmitting that data to every world in the galaxy right now. The Corvin delegate's form contracted in shock. We can and we have, Chenwei said. Every species will know that you murdered humanitarian aid workers. They'll know you were willing to let children die for mineral rights. They'll know exactly what the Corvin Empire really is. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Some delegates were checking their communication devices, seeing the transmitted data. Others were shouting, demanding order. The Corvin delegate was sparking so violently that safety shields activated around his platform. Chenwei walked toward the exit, her small delegation following. As she reached the door, the Prime Speaker called out, Ambassador Chen, if you leave now, if humanity defies the Council, there's no going back. You'll be alone against the universe. Chenwei stopped and turned back one last time. She looked at the 37 species still standing in support. Then at the Corvin delegate whose energy field was pure rage. Then at the Prime Speaker whose 6 arms hung limp with defeat. We've always been alone, she said. We've just been pretending otherwise. But alone or not, we're going to stand between this galaxy and extinction. We're going to activate every defense, prepare every weapon, train every soldier, and when the Devourers come, we'll be ready. She straightened her shoulders, and for a moment, she seemed to represent all of humanity, stubborn, defiant, and absolutely unwilling to give up. The Council has made its choice. Now humanity makes ours. The space above the neutral zone was filled with more ships than anyone had seen in one place for 1,000 years. 3 Corvin battle fleets hung in formation, their energy shields creating a blazing wall of light against the stars. Each fleet contained 50 vessels from massive dreadnoughts to swift attack cruisers. They were here to make an example of humanity. On the 3 contested worlds below, the human colonists continued their work. They had spent 6 days preparing the ancient defenses, with sick children helping where they could, carrying water to the workers or decoding symbols on the walls. The plague had claimed another 300 lives, but no one had fled. Admiral Chen Zhou, Chenwei's older brother, stood on the bridge of humanity's flagship, the United Earth vessel Resilience. It was one of only 20 human warships, outdated by galactic standards and outnumbered 7-1. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, the Corvin commander is broadcasting. The screen filled with the crackling energy form of Corvin Supreme Commander Flux. Humans, you have one final opportunity to surrender. Evacuate the worlds, return to the Council's authority, and we will show mercy. Chen Zhou activated his communicator. Commander Flux, those worlds contain 17,006 civilians, including 4,000 children. We've requested medical aid and safe passage for evacuation. You've denied both. You're not here for justice. You're here for slaughter. You brought this on yourselves, Flux replied. Fire on my command. But before he could give the order, every sensor in every ship screamed an alarm. Something was happening at the edge of the system. Space itself seemed to tear open and shadows poured through. Not ships in any conventional sense, but living darkness with teeth and hunger. The Devourers had arrived 17 months early. The first Corvin ship to be touched by the shadows simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone, as if it had never existed. Then another, and another. All fleets engage the unknown hostiles, Commander Flux ordered, his energy field fluctuating with panic. Corvin weapons fired into the darkness. Energy beams that could crack moons, missiles that could sterilize continents. They hit the shadows and did nothing. The Devourers continued forward, consuming everything they touched. On the planet below, the ancient machine suddenly roared to life. Every ruin, every defensive installation, every weapon the harmonics had left behind activated at once. The human colonists barely had time to reach the control centers before the systems took over. Chen Wei, who had returned to Colony 7 after leaving the council, placed her hand on the main control panel. The entire facility lit up around her, responding to her touch. All colonists, this is Ambassador Chen. The Devourers are here. Activate all defenses. Protect everyone, even the Corvins. Beams of impossible light erupted from all 3 planets simultaneously. They were different from any weapon the galaxy had seen, not destroying but unmaking, turning the Devourers' own hunger against them. Where the beam struck, the shadows screamed and retreated. Admiral Chen Zhou saw his opportunity. All human vessels formed defensive grid around the Corvin fleet. Yes, you heard me right. Protect them. Sir, his weapons officer said. They were about to destroy us. And now they're about to be destroyed. We're not them. Execute the order. The 20 human ships moved into position, using themselves as shields between the Devourers and the Corvin vessels. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was absolutely human. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched the battle through long-range sensors. The chamber that had been filled with argument 5 days ago was now silent. They watched human ships, barely held together with prayers and determination, standing between their enemies and annihilation. The Prime Speaker's 6 arms trembled. They're defending the Corvins. After everything, they're defending them. Below on the planets, the colonists were pushing the defensive weapons to their limits. Sarah Chen, the sick 8-year-old girl from the hologram, had crawled from her medical bed to help. She was too small to reach the main control, so someone had lifted her up. Her tiny hand on the panel was keeping one of the defensive beams active. Sarah, you need to rest, a doctor said. No, she said, her voice barely a whisper. The monsters are here. I promised we'd stop them. The defensive beams created a grid of light that the Devourers couldn't pass, but there were so many of them. An endless tide of darkness flowing from the tear in space, and the human ships were dying. The UEV Hope vanished into shadow. The Courage exploded, trying to ram a Devourer that was about to consume a Corvin medical frigate. Commander Flux watched in disbelief as human ships died protecting his fleet. Why, he transmitted to Admiral Chen Zhou. Why are you defending us? Because that's what we do, Chen Zhou replied, even as his ship shook from another near miss. Because someone has to. Because if we don't stand together now, we all fall separately. The battle raged for 6 hours. The ancient weapons fired continuously. The beams of unmaking holding back the tide of darkness. But the humans couldn't keep this up forever. The sick colonists were collapsing at their posts. The defensive systems were overheating. Then something unexpected happened. 37 ships jumped into the system. The species that had stood with humanity in the council had come. The Altarians with their swift fighters. The Zenthran with their merchant vessels converted into makeshift warships. Even the small Melody and their tiny scouts had come to help. This is Altarian Wing Commander Stormfeather, came the transmission. Humanity stood for us. Now we stand for them. The new ships joined the defensive grid, adding their weapons to the fight. It still wasn't enough to hurt the Devourers, but it gave the human ships time to regroup, to cover gaps in the defense. On Colony 7, Chen Wei noticed something in the control readings. The Devourers weren't just attacking randomly. They were probing, testing, looking for weaknesses. They were intelligent. Marcus, she called to her aide, who was helping maintain one of the secondary systems. Look at this pattern. Marcus studied the data. They're learning. They're adapting to the defensive beams. Chen Wei's mind raced. The harmonics had failed because the Devourers had eventually adapted to their weapons. But humans had something the harmonics didn't. They had chaos, unpredictability, the ability to do the absolutely insane when necessary. All colonies, This is Chen Wei. Random frequency shifts on all weapons. No pattern, no system. Let each operator choose based on instinct. Make it chaotic. It was completely against protocol. Weapon systems needed synchronized frequencies to work together. But the human colonists understood. They started changing their beam frequencies randomly, based on feelings, hunches, even rolling dice when available. The effect was immediate. The Devourers, who had been adapting to patterns, couldn't adapt to chaos. The randomly shifting beams caught them off guard, forcing them back. In the council chambers, delegates watched in amazement as the tide turned. The human strategy made no sense, but it was working. They're actually doing it, the Thromax delegate said, his crystalline body humming. They're stopping them. But Chen Wei knew it wasn't enough. The tear in space was still open. More Devourers would keep coming. She studied the ancient controls, looking for something, anything that could close that rift. Then she found it, a final protocol hidden deep in the system. But the power requirement was massive. It would need all 3 planets' defensive systems working in perfect synchronization, channeling everything into one burst. "Admiral," she called to her brother, "I'm sending you coordinates. You need to get every ship away from that point in space. We're going to close the rift, but the energy discharge will destroy anything within 1,000,000 kilometers. Wei, that includes half the Corvin fleet. They're too damaged to move." Chen Wei closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them with resolve. "Then we tow them. Every human ship that can still move, grab a Corvin vessel and pull them to safety." It was insane. The human ships were already damaged, already pushed beyond their limits. But Admiral Chen Zhou gave the order, and humanity's battered fleet began the impossible task of saving their enemies. Commander Flux watched human ships, some literally falling apart, attaching tow cables to his vessels. The Resilience, with half its hull torn open to space, was pulling his own flagship to safety. "Why?" he asked again. This time Chen Wei answered, her voice carrying across all channels. "Because this is what the Harmonic saw in us. Not our strength, not our technology, but this. The willingness to save everyone, even those who hate us. The stupidity to try the impossible. The insanity to choose hope over fear." With minutes to spare, the last ships cleared the danger zone. Chen Wei looked at the sick little girl whose hand was still on the control panel. "Sarah, when I say now, push as hard as you can, okay?" The little girl nodded, her face determined despite her illness. All colonies, all operators, everything into the final pulse. 3, 2, 1, now. 17,000 humans, from children to elderly, sick and healthy, all pushed their controls simultaneously. The 3 planets' defensive systems synchronized for one perfect moment. The beams converged on the tear in space where the Devourers were entering. The explosion of light was visible from Nexus Prime without any magnification. The tear in space collapsed, cutting off the Devourers' invasion route.